Hey guys, JLP Zombie here and welcome back to another video. So, as promised, I'm going to be continuing with my Universal series of monster reviews, and this is The Mummy. So, 1 year after the success of Universal's monster movie Frankenstein, Boris Karloff would be brought on board again to be in their next major monster movie, and that movie would be released in 1932 and be titled The Mummy. The film was inspired by the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb and the curse involved around it, but unlike Dracula and Frankenstein, The Mummy was never originated within the pages of a novel. Now, I myself have never really been too keen on the concept of mummy movies. I much prefer vampires, werewolves, and of course zombies. I've never really found mummy movies interesting or scary to that matter. But saying that, I do actually enjoy Hammer's version of The Mummy released in 1959. I mean, let's face it, you can't beat a bit of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, can you? But as for this mummy movie, it isn't really my favourite in the Universal monster cycle. After the opening scene, the film really only has two standout scenes, in my mind anyway. So let's talk about the opening scene. The opening titles alone are absolutely fantastic, with the pyramid and the title of the movie formed onto the pyramid. That's great. And the music as well, which is the Swan Lake theme, which we heard previously in Dracula, I think is very fitting to the opening titles of the movie. Also, Universal usually tend to use the same actors for some of their movies, so apart from Boris Karloff, we also this time get to see the return of Edward Van Sloan, but this time portraying the role of Dr. Muller. After the opening titles, the film opens with an archaeological expedition. A group of archaeologists discover the mummy of an ancient high priest named Imhotep. They also discover that whilst Imhotep was buried alive, a casket was also buried with him. And in traditional mummy fashion, it's cursed. And of course, this is a horror movie, so what do the characters do? They open the casket. Let's face it, if they didn't open the casket, the movie would be pretty boring and short. So they open the casket, and what they discover is the ancient scroll of Thoth. And of course, the scroll gets translated and Imhotep begins to awake. And what I love about this scene so much is that there's absolutely no music at all. So in that aspect, it just makes it a little bit more creepy. Slowly moving his arms down his chest, Imhotep is now free and leaves his coffin. The camera then focuses on a lone archaeologist, but it then pans down and focuses on the scroll as Imhotep's hands reaches in and grabs it. This leaves the archaeologist in hysterics. All he can do is stand and laugh like a madman. As this segment ends, the camera follows Imhotep's trailing bandages as the mummy leaves the room. After that scene, the movie doesn't grab me like the other Universal monster movies. I mean, in all fairness, after that it only gets my attention near enough at the end of the movie with the flashback scenes, which I'll come on to a bit later. But in all honesty, we don't really see Imhotep in his traditional mummy form at all, really. He never appears in his mummy bandages after that scene. Instead, the film jumps ahead 10 years later, and now Imhotep is disguising himself as a modern Egyptian named Ardith Bey, covering himself in makeup, Fez included. And there are a lot of scenes in The Mummy that are quite reminiscent of Dracula. One in particular where the camera will focus on Karloff's eyes, of course being reminiscent where the camera would focus on Bela Lugosi's mesmerising eyes. Also, once again, Jack Pierce returns to turn Karloff into Universal's new monster. Now, I'm not so sure if this was true, but I read it on Wikipedia, but it was said from time to time that Jack Pierce had a reputation of being quite bad-tempered, or at least being quite stern. But apparently, whilst he was working with Boris Karloff, he was absolutely fine. They had a good connection between each other. And Pierce and Karloff's collaboration with each other was actually critically acclaimed and impressed audiences. Now, previously, I spoke about two of the scenes in the film that stood out to me, and those are the flashback scenes. The first is when Imhotep is being bandaged up and buried alive. Before that, I think what made it even more creepy and kind of graphic is when he begged for mercy and it is explained they cut out his tongue. Now, of course, for being a 1932 movie, this violent act is never shown. But what is shown is still very disturbing for a 1932 movie, and possibly quite graphic. As the flashback scene continues, it shows the slaves who buried Imhotep being impaled with spears by soldiers. I'll say it again. For a film that was released in 1932, this scene must have been very, very hard to watch. And I do believe that on the VHS version, the scene might have been cut. And also, you don't see the spears enter the slave's body, so to speak. You actually just see the spears sticking out of the slave's chest. But it actually shows blood trailing down the slave's torso. I realise I haven't covered everything in this review because there's only been twice that I've seen the movie. I've seen it the first time, which was quite a while ago, a couple of years ago, and recently when I had to go and do this review. I realised that this could be a controversial review because I'm not a big fan of it, and I know it does have its fans out there, but like I've said, I don't really enjoy mummy movies as much as other monster movies. I have seen the Brendan Fraser remake, which is God, I must have seen that when I was very young. It came out in '99. I don't like that movie. It has some fun scenes in it, but it's just I personally don't think it's a very enjoyable movie. If I want to watch these type of movies, I would much rather watch Indiana Jones, not the Crystal Skull. But overall, I think for a casual viewer, people might find this movie a bit slow. They also might find it boring at times, the casual viewer. When the flashbacks are shown, that's when it grabs my interest. After the opening scene, it sort of loses my interest, but when the flashback scenes are shown, that's when it grabs my interest. But like I said, this movie does have its fans out there, and it is now regarded as a classic Universal monster movie, and for that I certainly do appreciate it. So guys, thank you for checking out my review for the 1932 Universal monster movie, The Mummy. My next Universal monster movie will be for the 1933 movie, The Invisible Man, and I have got a lot of great things to say about that movie, so I hope you can join me for the review. If you enjoyed this review, give the video a like and pop some comments in the comment section. Tell me, what are your thoughts on The Mummy? Help me. Please don't tell me I'm the only one who doesn't really like this movie. Anyway guys, I'll see you in the next video, and as always, take care.